Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to Speedway Motors. Today we are going to show you how to install a throttle pedal cable, a kickdown cable, and a universal throttle and kickdown cable bracket to our 59 Corvette demo chassis. If you have a vehicle that does not have an automatic transmission or doesn't use a kickdown cable, you can always use a simple throttle cable bracket like this one from Lokar. Our vehicle needs both, so we're going to use this universal bracket that we picked up from Speedway Motors. First, let's have a look inside these packages. This is the Lokar throttle cable. This is a 36-inch long throttle cable. You can cut this to length. Inside, it comes with a sticker, some instructions, and a little Allen wrench. On the end, you have a pin clevis. This uses a little E-clip to secure it to the pedal. And on the other end, you have a universal joint that connects to the throttle itself. On the kickdown side of things, we're using this kickdown cable from Lokar. This is their high-tech series. It does have a nice braided jacket. It has a quick release pin for your carburetor or fuel injection throttle body. On the other end, we have a very nice billet adapter that goes into the transmission. This is for a Turbo 350. This little end, this connects to the pin on the transmission, which we'll show you here in a little bit. Inside the instruction kit is the instructions for the kickdown cable, an O-ring, a bracket, a couple of bolts, and another Allen wrench. We'll be installing all of this on our mock-up 1959 Corvette chassis. There's no body on this chassis, it's just a floor pan and a firewall. We're using this so that you can see all aspects of this installation and adjustment process. So let's go over to the car and get to it. All right, so first thing we need to do is mount our new pedal that we got from Speedway to our Corvette floor pan. And we've already sat in the car and kind of got a feel for the position. And we took our pencil and we marked a hole here and here. Now we're going to drill this out. Now we're going to use riv nuts. So I'm going to use my handy dandy riv nut tool, thread my riv nut on, stick it in the hole, and then give it a pull. This will give us a cleaner look on the outside of the car under the hood, and it gives you the benefit of being able to remove the pedal with just one person. You don't have to have somebody on the other side holding a wrench. So now we just need to take our 1/4-20 bolts, thread that in, and there we go. We have a well-functioning pedal. Does exactly what we want. Now we can go in and install the cable. We've got our throttle pedal right here, and we want to adjust it a little bit. We want to get maximum pull on our cable. So we're going to pull this bolt right here, and then we can adjust the pedal position to wherever we want. So what I would like to do is just pull this off, and with this to the floor, which is right here, I'm going to set our cable up here. Now we're probably going to go ahead and adjust that more at some point, but this is our starting point. All right, so first what we need to do is unwrap our cable. This cable is much longer than we need for this car, but that's so that we have some room to work. This is the throttle side and this is the pedal side. We want to pop this E-clip off so that we can connect it to the pedal, and we need to drill the firewall for this ferrule right here. This will clamp the firewall and keep everything nice and secure and look really good. Pop this C-clip off. Do not lose that. Drop that pin off. On the other side, you need to remove this ferrule from the cable, and then we can pull the cable itself out. The firewall nut and fitting, remove the nut. Okay, so I've got a silver pencil. You can use whatever you want, but this is black, so we want to make sure that we can see it. Now, the key to this position, where that ferrule goes through the firewall, is really important. It has to be in direct line with the throttle pedal arm. we want maximum pull so that we can have this as close to the floor as possible. So I'm gonna go right here. I'm just holding my pencil here, and I'm using the second hole as kind of my guide. And when it's all the way in this furthest up position, that lines up with the top hole, which is the one we're most likely going to use. And throughout the arc, that is in a pretty good position all the way down to the floor. So we're going to put our throttle pedal hole right here. And now I'm just going to mark a little cross on there, and we're going to drill that out. I'm going to move this arm down so I have it out of the way. And we're going to drill a small pilot hole right here in the center. And then the final hole, which is 5/16. Now we take our throttle pedal sleeve, and we're going to put it on the inside of the firewall and slide it inside. And then the nut goes on. There you go, just like that. Now we're under the hood. We have our throttle cable sleeve, and you can see where it's mounted on the firewall. This is a bit of a tight fit, but we're just gonna wrap this around here. That should get us good action. If we can, we might rotate this down. We're just gonna try to find the best position for this cable to route. I think something like that is gonna be our best option. So I'm just going to kind of hold it here in this position as I set it down. So now we're going to mount our adjustable bracket. We're going to loosen that up. And the bracket sits on like this. It is secured by just the one bolt. Then we put that nut back on and tighten it down. Next, we take our throttle cable and we route the throttle cable to the throttle cable position, which is up here. This one is for the kickdown cable. I'm just gonna run that all the way through. Now we're gonna take our Sharpie, keep this in position. You wanna make sure you have some adjustment. Don't make this too tight. If you're like, oh, this is nice and snug, I like that. Well, in the adjustment process, you may need to move this a little bit, and now you have no room. So you want to give yourself at least an inch or so of play room for your cable housing. Then we're just going to mark this with a Sharpie. Then we can take this out and go cut it. So now we're going to cut this cable. So because this is a braided cable, you do not want to remove this ferrule. If you remove this ferrule and cut this cable, you're going to have a heck of a time getting this back on. So instead of removing this, all you do is push the cable through it, and we're going to come all the way back. We're going to make sure that we're way past our mark here. Then we're going to take this and we're going to put this in a chop saw. Snug it up in the chop saw. I'm going to hold on to the other end. You can take your ferrule and slide it right to the end, and you're all done. All right, now we just need to install the cable back into the firewall. Then we take our bracket mount. This side of the bracket mount goes to the cable. So we're going to slide our little ferrule inside this, and then this comes over here to the cable, and then we thread on our bolt. There's a lot of adjustment room here, so you want to try to start in the middle if you can. That gives you more adjustment for later on. Now we're going to take the cable and we're going to put it inside. This is from inside the car. And we're just going to push that all the way through. It's feeding nice and easy, so I feel like our housing is well positioned. Next, we take our little pin that we took off earlier. We're going to slide it in to the throttle pedal bracket, and then the E-clip. There you go. Now we're going to take our throttle mount. Has a nut right here. We're going to use this hole right here in our throttle bracket. Tighten that up. Now we take this ferrule and we're going to slide it onto the cable. This is the correct orientation. The threads should be at the front or the end of the cable because it will thread into this fitting here on the throttle bracket. And now we get to position our cable. You want to make sure that you pull the cable so that all of the cable is out, so that the top of the pedal is against the floor. And then we're gonna slide our ferrule up, all the way up, and we're gonna mark that with our Sharpie. Then we take our cable cutters and we're gonna cut right on our mark. And then we're gonna pull the last little bits just inside the ferrule. Tighten it down. Now we can take this and thread it in. We need to adjust this. So first thing we're gonna do is look directly down into the carburetor. We want to make sure that both of the throttle blades are closed. And then we want to push the pedal all the way to the floor and make sure that all of the throttle blades are opening. Then you're gonna grab the throttle and you're gonna make sure that it's all the way open, which it is. So where we're at, this is perfect, everything works. Now that the throttle pedal has been taken care of, now it's time to do the kickdown. First thing that we're gonna do is remove this ferrule. So now we're gonna go ahead and slide off all of these components. Remember the order, and we're gonna pull that cable all the way out. Now we're gonna take this and this to the engine. Now we're gonna take our housing, we've got it unraveled, and we're just gonna kinda route it around the distributor and down to the transmission. We're gonna go ahead and detach the throttle cable so it's not in our way. Now we need to remove this bracket to fit our Lokar kickdown cable. This is for a TV cable or a factory style cable. We need this with the smaller hole. So now we're gonna take this and just thread this in here just like that. There we go, snug that up. Make sure your cable is pushed in. Now we come around to the transmission side. This transmission has the original cable still in it. We're gonna remove that. There's a little bolt right in here that holds that onto the transmission. Then pull this out of the transmission. Inside the transmission, there is a steel wire. This connects to the end of the cable. But when you disconnect it from the cable, it should not drop into the transmission. It should just kind of float. Work that cable around the little latch. It's basically just a little S in the cable. And then that should just sit right there like it's doing. That little steel rod is going to sit inside this. We're just gonna slide it in there, no O-ring, we're not gonna bolt it together. Notice we have a ton of slack. We can adjust this cable so we can get this the way we want. We're gonna route this nice and tight behind the engine. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this out. Like the previous cable, you wanna slide this all the way back. I'm gonna take my Sharpie. I'm gonna have a look at this. How far in does this go? It goes in about 3/4 of an inch. So I'm gonna hold this here. This is where I want it, and I'm just gonna come up here about 3/4 of an inch, and I'm gonna mark it there. Now we can take this out of the car. All right, now we're gonna take the cable and we're gonna install it back into the housing. We're gonna come over here and we're gonna line this up with our pin on the transmission and just hook it in. That's it. Keeping the cable tight, we're gonna go ahead and get this all pushed back down into the transmission. This housing should be snugged up to the transmission case. Before we move on to the next step, you want to slide the retainer clip over the housing, and that can go all the way down to the transmission. Now then we take the cable and we slide it through the end here on the bracket. We bring it all the way up and we push our ferrule into the bracket. Now we're going to take our post and put it in the lower position. We've got our connector. We're going to slide the cable all the way through it. We're going to go ahead and connect it to the carburetor. At this point, we're going to go ahead and reinstall the throttle cable. Now we take our lock ferrule. We're going to slide it over the end of the cable. With the throttle in the wide open position, you are going to pull this cable as tight as you can get it. Okay, you're going to pull that as tight as you can get it and then tighten the set screw. All right, now we're going to go ahead and remove the cable from the transmission. Pop that off of there. Kit comes with a new O-ring. We're going to slide that over the tube and just pop that into the groove. Make sure you add a little bit of lube to that O-ring so it doesn't tear. Then come back and just slip that right back onto the kickdown for the transmission. You might have to wiggle it a little bit to get the new O-ring to snap in place. This little leg here goes towards the transmission. That's what helps ensure you have plenty of pressure on the clamp so that it doesn't come loose and leak. And then tighten it down with an Allen. Now everything is hooked up, so we're going to go ahead and connect our linkage. Make sure that the throttle blades are open. Make sure that the kickdown cable is not interfering with the ability to go to wide open throttle, as in this is not too tight so that the carburetor or throttle body cannot open all the way. We're in good position here. Got just a little bit of slack. You can just move this a little bit. It's tight, but it's not too tight. Now you're good to go. I'm going to pull it off of the throttle blades, and I'm just going to use a set of side cutters. Snap that on, you're ready to go. All right, so we've gone through the entire setup of the Lokar throttle and kickdown cable using the Speedway bracket. Now we're going to remove the Speedway bracket and show you how to do this with the Lokar bracket. First, we're just going to pop these off real quick. So we're going to remove these cables, remove this bracket, and show you how the Lokar bracket works. Now we take that bracket off. So this bracket goes on just like this, and then what's really cool, it has this adjustable set screw. What I like about this is you can use this to get your position correct on the carburetor, and then you set that set screw so that it pushes up against the carburetor body or your throttle body. And once this is all bolted in and tightened down, it cannot move. It cannot rock forward once it's tightened down because of that nice little set screw. The main bracket gets mounted on the carburetor, and then the secondary bracket, it comes in, bolts right through here. This holds your kickdown cable, this holds your throttle cable, and this is your mount for your return spring. So this is a really nice little setup. It's nice and clean and compact and designed specifically to work with this style of cable. So before I bolt this onto the carb, I'm just going to take this apart here. So we're just going to tighten this down. This is a nylock nut, so it does take a little bit of, just a little bit of effort just to tighten it down. We want to get that snug, but not too tight. Now I'm going to drop the bracket onto the carburetor, then install that nut, and then snug up that bolt. Now we just need to reinstall our cables. First, we're going to install the kickdown cable. I'm just going to thread this right through there and install the keeper nut. Again, I have this set in about the center of the adjustment range. Then I'm going to go ahead and run the throttle cable in here. Now, just like before, you're going to take the cable and thread it through the lock ferrule. Then we put that in, and we're going to, remember, we're going to set this, let's see here, about like that. And from here, I can go ahead and tighten this down, and we've got plenty of adjustment everywhere else. Then we reinstall the kickdown connector and the ferrule, and we are good to go. That's all there is to installing a Lokar throttle cable, kickdown cable, and the Lokar and Speedway versions of the cable brackets. Make sure you check out speedwaymotors.com to get all the parts you need for your project. Thanks for watching.